The planet 442b was a dead world. No trees, no rivers, no life, just red dust and broken stones that stretched to the horizon under a pale orange sky. The Galactic Archaeological Coalition had visited this place many years ago. They had looked at the ruins, taken some pictures, and left. They said there was nothing special here, just another dead civilization, just more dust. But Dr. Park did not believe them. She stood at the edge of the excavation site, watching her team work in the dim light of the dying sun. 3 months they had been here. 3 months of digging through rock and sand, of sleeping in small tents, of eating food that tasted like plastic. Her back hurt. Her eyes were tired. But every morning she woke up with the same feeling in her chest. Something was here, something important. A voice called from below. She looked down into the pit. Her lead engineer was waving his arms. He was a tall man with messy hair and dirt on his face. He always looked like he had just woken up, even when he had been working for 12 hours. "You need to see this," he shouted. Climbed down the metal ladder, her boots sending small clouds of dust into the air with each step. At the bottom, was standing next to Han, there, was a small woman with sharp eyes and glasses that were always sliding down her nose. She was holding her tablet and frowning at something on the screen. "What did you find?" asked. Pointed at the wall they had been clearing. For weeks, they had been removing layers of rock and dirt, slowly revealing what lay beneath. Now, finally, they could see it clearly. A doorway. It was made of black stone, perfectly smooth, without a single crack or scratch. Strange symbols covered its surface, carved deep into the rock. They seemed to glow faintly, though that might have been a trick of the light. "The dating results came back," said quietly. "This structure is 40,000 years old." Felt her breath catch in her throat. 40,000 years. The oldest known civilization in the galaxy, the Confederacy, was only 10,000 years old. Whatever had built this place had existed 30,000 years before any other species had learned to make fire. "That is not possible," whispered. "The tests do not lie," replied. "I ran them 3 times." Behind them, someone made a sound of disbelief. Turned to see the observers standing at the edge of the pit. There were 3 of them, tall, thin creatures with gray skin and 4 eyes that blinked independently. They had been sent by the Galactic Council to watch the human team, to make sure the newcomers did not damage anything important. The lead observer, whose name could not pronounce, stepped forward. His 4 eyes moved across the doorway, and something like concern crossed his face. "This is unexpected," he said in his slow, careful voice. "We surveyed this site 200 years ago. There was nothing here." "Maybe you did not dig deep enough," said with a small smile. The observer did not reply. His eyes were fixed on the symbols carved into the stone. Noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. "Can we open it?" she asked. He shrugged. "I do not see any lock or mechanism, but these symbols might be some kind of code." The linguist pushed her glasses up and stepped closer to the door. She studied the carvings for a long moment, her lips moving silently as she tried to make sense of them. "I have never seen this language before," she finally said, "but the structure is strange. The grammar, the way the symbols connect, it feels familiar somehow, like a song I heard once but cannot remember." Reached out and touched the door. The stone was cold under her fingers, colder than it should have been. She traced one of the symbols with her fingertip. The door opened. There was no sound, no grinding of stone against stone. The door simply split down the middle and swung inward, revealing a darkness so complete that their lights could not touch it. "Well," said after a moment of silence, "that was easy." They entered slowly, their flashlights cutting weak paths through the black. The air inside was stale but breathable, untouched for thousands of years. Their footsteps echoed off walls they could not see. Then Slight found something, and they all stopped. A chamber, massive. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. The walls were covered with more carvings, more symbols, stretching up and up until they faded from sight, and in the center of the room, on a pedestal of white stone, sat a sphere. It was about the size of a human head, made of something that looked like crystal. It was perfectly smooth, perfectly round, without a single flaw. Even in the darkness, it seemed to catch light that was not there, glowing with a soft inner fire. The observers hung back at the entrance, their 4 eyes wide, heard one of them whisper something in their own language. It sounded like a prayer. "Energy readings are off the scale," said, looking at his scanner. "There is power inside this thing, a lot of power. It has been dormant, but it is still there, after 40,000 years. "That should not be possible," said. "No power source lasts that long, nothing we know of." Walked toward the pedestal. She could feel something pulling her forward, a gentle tug at the center of her chest. The sphere seemed to grow brighter as she approached, though she told herself it was just her imagination. "Dr. Park," the observer called out. "Perhaps we should wait. We should call for more scientists, more equipment. This is too important to touch the sphere." Light exploded through the chamber, not harsh or blinding but warm, like the first rays of the sun after a long night. It washed over them all, filling every corner, chasing away every shadow. The observers cried out and fell back, dropped his scanner, grabbed his arm. But could not move, she could not look away. Because letters were forming on the surface of the sphere. Slowly, one by one, glowing bright blue against the crystal. Not script. Not any alien language. English. Perfect, clear English. "Welcome, YUNA." The chamber was silent. No one breathed, no one moved. Stared at her own name, written in light on a relic older than human civilization. Her heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears. "How," she whispered, "how do you know my name?" The sphere pulsed once, gently, like a heartbeat. More letters appeared below the first. "We have been waiting for you." Behind her, she heard one of the observers fall to his knees. She heard make a small, broken sound. She heard say something, but the words did not reach her. Because in that moment, standing in a chamber older than time, touching a relic that should not exist, Park felt something shift in the universe. Something had been sleeping. And now, at last, it was awake. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Within hours of discovery, every major news network was talking about it. Within days, ships from a dozen different species were racing toward 442b. Within a week, the small human camp had become a crowded city of tents and temporary buildings, filled with scientists, politicians, soldiers, and reporters from every corner of known space. Everyone wanted to see the sphere. Everyone wanted to touch it. Everyone wanted to know how an artifact 40,000 years old could speak perfect English. But the sphere would not speak to them. The Confederacy sent their best scientists. They brought machines that could scan down to the atomic level. They brought computers that could translate any language. They brought experts who had spent their entire lives studying ancient civilizations. The sphere ignored them. When it touched it, nothing happened. The crystal stayed dark and cold. The letters did not appear. It was as if the artifact had gone back to sleep. The Empire arrived next. They were large creatures, covered in thick scales, with voices that rumbled like thunder. They claimed that the ruins were in their territory and that the sphere belonged to them by right. They pushed their way into the chamber and demanded to be shown respect. The sphere did not care about their demands. It did not glow. It did not speak. It sat on its pedestal like an ordinary rock, dead and silent. Then the Syndicate of Worlds sent a message. They were a group of smaller species who had banded together for protection. They had always feared humans, worried that the young race would grow too powerful too quickly. Now they threatened economic punishments if humanity did not share the sphere with everyone. But you cannot share something that will not work for you. Only when a human approached did the sphere wake up. Only when touched it did the letters appear. She spent hours in the chamber every day, asking questions, reading the responses that formed on the crystal surface, recorded everything, filling hard drive after hard drive with data, worked without sleep, trying to understand how any of this was possible. The sphere called itself a beacon. It said it had been placed here long ago, hidden deep underground where no one would find it until the right time. It said it had been waiting. Waiting for what? Asked. The letters glowed softly. For you to come home. Felt cold when she read those words. She did not understand what they meant. Earth was home. Humanity had evolved there, had grown there, had taken its first steps into space from there. Everyone knew this. It was simple fact. But the beacon said otherwise. Over the following days, it shared more and more. It spoke of a time before time, when the galaxy was young and empty. It spoke of a species that had risen from a small blue world, had spread across the stars, had built wonders that made the current civilizations look like children playing with toys. It spoke of humans. That cannot be right, said when she saw the translations. Her face was pale, her hands were shaking. Humans evolved on Earth. We have fossil records, we have DNA evidence, we know our history. Do we? Asked quietly. The beacon showed them images. Not pictures exactly, but something projected directly into their minds when they touched the crystal. Saw great ships crossing between stars in the blink of an eye. She saw stations orbiting black holes, harvesting their power. She saw cities floating in the clouds of gas giants, beautiful beyond words. And she saw humans building all of it. They looked like her. They dressed differently, spoke differently, but they were unmistakably human. Men and women with 2 arms and 2 legs, with eyes and ears and mouths, laughing and crying and loving just like the people she knew. 40,000 years ago, humanity had ruled the galaxy. But what happened? Asked the beacon. Where did they go? Where did we go? The sphere pulsed sadly, and for a long moment no letters appeared. When they finally came, they were slower than before, as if the beacon was struggling to find the right words. They sacrificed everything. So that you could live. Finally cracked the code of the inscriptions carved around the chamber walls. She had been working on them for weeks, comparing them to every known language in the galactic database. Nothing matched, but something about the structure kept nagging at her, something familiar hiding just beneath the surface. Then she realized the truth. The inscriptions were not alien at all. They were human. They were written in a language so old that it had changed beyond recognition, twisted and evolved over thousands and thousands of years. But the roots were still there, buried deep. The roots that would one day become the languages of Earth. We did not start on Earth, announced to the team one evening. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. We were placed there. Someone took humans from the stars and put them on that planet, wiped their memories, took away their technology, and left them to start over as primitives. Why? Asked. Why would anyone do that? Shook her head. I do not know yet, but the beacon might. The next day went back to the chamber alone. The observers watched her go but did not follow. They had stopped trying to touch the sphere. They just watched now, their 4 eyes filled with something that looked like fear. Tell me what happened, said to the beacon. Tell me the truth, all of it. The sphere glowed brighter than ever before. Letters appeared on its surface, then faded, replaced by new ones, the story pouring out in a flood of light. We were not alone. Something came from the dark. Something hungry. We fought, for 1,000 years we fought. But we could not win. So we hid our children. We scattered them across 1,000 worlds. We made them forget. And we waited. Waited for them to grow strong again. Waited for them to return. Waited for you, YUNA. felt tears running down her face. She did not know why she was crying. She had never met these people, these ancient humans who had given up everything. But somehow, deep in her bones, she felt their loss. She felt their hope. "What came from the dark?" she asked. "What were you fighting?" The beacon flickered. For a moment thought it would not answer. Then one final word appeared, glowing red instead of blue. The hollow. Outside the chamber, at the edge of known space, something stirred in the darkness between stars. It had been sleeping for a very long time, but now it was waking up. It could feel them. The children had returned. And it was hungry. The beacon showed them everything. Touched the crystal surface and the world disappeared. She was no longer standing in a dark chamber on a dead planet. She was somewhere else, someone else. 40,000 years in the past, watching history unfold like a dream. She saw the ancient humans at the height of their power. Their cities covered entire planets. Their ships filled the space between stars like schools of silver fish. They had solved problems that modern scientists still struggled with. They had cured every disease, ended hunger, created energy from nothing. They were gods walking among the stars. But they were not cruel gods. When younger species took their first steps into space, humanity was there to greet them. They shared their knowledge freely. They protected the weak from the strong. They built great academies where anyone could learn, great hospitals where anyone could heal, great gardens where anyone could find peace. The ancestors were there. So were hundreds of other species, some that still existed and some that had been forgotten. They all looked up to humanity with wonder and gratitude. "They called us the Guardians," whispered. She was seeing the visions too, tears streaming down her face. "We protected them. We protected everyone." Then the darkness came. Saw it arrive from the spaces between galaxies, from the cold void where nothing should exist. The hollow. They had no true form, no body that could be touched or seen clearly. They were absence given shape, hunger given will. They consumed light and heat and life, leaving nothing behind but emptiness. No one knew where they came from. No one knew what they wanted. They simply appeared one day at the edge of human space and began to feed. The first worlds to fall were small colonies, distant outposts that humanity barely noticed. But then larger worlds went dark, then star systems, then entire sectors. The Guardians went to war. Watched the battles unfold. She saw human fleets numbering in the millions, ships of every size carrying weapons that could crack planets. She saw soldiers in armor that made them nearly immortal, fighting creatures that should not exist. She saw brilliant generals and brave captains and ordinary people who became heroes because they had no other choice. For 1,000 years, humanity held the line. Was weeping openly now, and he did not seem to care. "Look at them," he said. "Look at what we were." The battles were terrible. For every hollow destroyed, 100 human ships were lost. Worlds burned. Stars died. The galaxy grew darker and darker as the war dragged on. The younger species tried to help. They sent their best warriors. They offered their resources. Others gave what they could. But they were children fighting giants. They could not make a real difference. Only humanity could hold back the dark. But the cost was too high. Saw the numbers falling, year after year, the great cities emptying, the mighty fleets shrinking, the funeral ceremonies growing longer and longer as more and more names were added to the lists of the dead. After 1,000 years, humanity was dying. The beacon showed a meeting, a great hall filled with the last leaders of humanity, men and women with tired eyes and gray hair, carrying the weight of an impossible choice on their shoulders. "We cannot win," one of them said, an old woman with a voice like broken glass. "If we keep fighting, we will be destroyed completely. The hollow will consume us, and then they will consume everyone else." "Then what do we do?" a man asked. He was younger, anger burning in his eyes. "Surrender, run." "Neither," the old woman replied. She touched a control panel and a map appeared in the air above them. 1,000 points of light scattered across the galaxy. We hide. We scatter our children across these worlds, places the hollow will not think to look. We remove their memories, their technology, everything that might attract attention. We let them start over. That is madness, the young man said. We would be sending them back to the Stone Age. They would have to rebuild everything from nothing. Yes, the old woman agreed. But they would be alive, and one day they would return to the stars. One day they would remember. In the hollow, we will seal them away, push them back into the void and close the door behind them. It will take everything we have left. None of us will survive. The hall was silent for a long time. Then one by one, the leaders nodded. Watched them say goodbye to their families. She watched them send their children away in small ships, scattered to 1,000 different worlds. She watched them turn to face the darkness one last time, knowing they would never see the dawn. She watched them die. The final battle was too bright to look at directly. The weapons they used were beyond anything the modern galaxy could imagine. They tore holes in space itself. They burned with the fire of collapsing stars. They pushed the hollow back, further and further, until finally the great seal closed around them. The void went quiet. And humanity, the guardians of the galaxy, were gone. Came back to the present gasping for air, her hands still pressed against the beacon, and were on their knees beside her, their faces wet with tears. They died for us, whispered. They died so we could live. The beacon pulsed once, and new letters appeared. The seal is weakening. The hollow sense your return. They are coming. Felt ice in her veins. How long do we have? To CYCLES of your home star. Perhaps less. 2 years. 2 years before the nightmare that had destroyed ancient humanity returned to finish what it started. Is there anything we can do? Asked. Any way to stop them? The beacon glowed and something new appeared on its surface. Not words this time, but images, coordinates, schematics, detailed plans for ships and weapons and shields, technology that made everything in the modern galaxy look like children's toys. Your ANCESTORS prepared for this. They knew you would need to fight. They left CACHES hidden across the galaxy. Weapons, ships, knowledge. Everything you need to become GUARDIANS again. Was already recording, his hands shaking as he captured every piece of data. This is everything, he breathed. This is 40,000 years of technology, military, medical, engineering, everything. It is not just a message, realized. It is an inheritance. They left us an entire civilization waiting to be reclaimed. Stood slowly, her legs unsteady beneath her. Through the chamber door, she could see the crowd that had gathered outside, and Inhumans and a dozen other species, all watching, all waiting. They were about to learn that the galaxy they knew was built on a lie, that the young race they had dismissed as newcomers had once been their protectors, that the darkness was coming back, and the only hope for survival was the children of the Guardians. The children who had finally come home. Tell everyone, said quietly. Tell them everything. We do not have time for secrets anymore. Outside, the stars continued to shine, but far away at the edge of everything, they were beginning to flicker. The hollow were waking up, and they were very, very hungry. The revelation broke the galaxy. Every news network, every communication channel, every corner of known space was filled with the same story. Humanity was not young. Humanity had not crawled out of caves just 50,000 years ago. Humanity had once ruled the stars, had protected every other species, had sacrificed everything to save them all. And now the darkness was coming back. Reactions came in waves. The Confederacy was the first to respond officially. Their High Council gathered in their ancient chambers, surrounded by floating screens showing the evidence from the beacon. For 3 days they debated. For 3 days their four-eyed faces showed shock and shame and fear. On the fourth day, they sent a message to Earth. "We have treated you as children," the leader said. He was the oldest of his species, his gray skin wrinkled with age. "We looked down on you. We thought ourselves superior. We were wrong. Your ancestors saved our ancestors. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. Whatever comes next, the Confederacy stands with humanity." The Empire responded differently. They were proud creatures, used to power and conquest. The idea that humans had once protected them was difficult to accept, but the evidence was impossible to deny. "We do not like this truth," the war chief said in a public broadcast. His scales shifted colors as he spoke, showing his discomfort. "But we are not fools. The Hollow are real. The threat is real. The will fight. We always fight." Other species followed. The small nations of the Syndicate their threats and offered their support instead. Ancient rivals put aside their conflicts. Old grudges were forgotten, at least for now. The galaxy was uniting in a way it never had before. But not everyone was grateful. The Dominion refused to believe. They were a powerful species, almost as old as and they had built their entire civilization on one core belief. They were the chosen people of the universe. They were meant to rule. They were destined for greatness. The idea that humans had once been their protectors was not just wrong to them. It was offensive. It was impossible. It could not be true. "Lies," the Dominion High Priest declared. He stood in their greatest temple, surrounded by millions of followers who watched through screens across their empire. "Human lies designed to make us weak. They want us to bow to them. They want us to worship them. We will not." "But the evidence," one of his advisors began. "Evidence can be faked," the High Priest snapped. "This beacon is a human trick, a machine they built to spread their propaganda. We will not fall for it." Across the galaxy, the Dominion pulled back their ships, closed their borders, and refused to cooperate with anyone. They would not participate in the coming war. They would not share resources. They would not listen. Watched the broadcasts with growing frustration. She was on Earth now, standing before the United Council that governed human space. She had never wanted this role. She was an archaeologist. She dug in the dirt and studied old things. She was not a leader, not a politician, not a soldier. But the beacon had chosen her, and now everyone looked to her for answers. "We cannot force the Dominion to believe," she told the council. "We do not have time to convince them. The Hollow are already moving." She touched a control, and a map of the galaxy appeared above them. Red dots marked the places where stars had gone dark in the past month. There were dozens of them now, spreading inward like a disease. "They are not dying," explained. He stood beside, his face grim. "The stars are being eaten. The Hollow consume energy, light, heat, radiation, everything. When they pass through a system, they leave nothing behind but cold and darkness." "How long until they reach populated space?" a council member asked. 18 months, maybe less." The room erupted in noise. Fear, anger, desperation, all mixing together in a wave of voices. Let them shout. She understood. She had felt the same fear when she first learned the truth. But fear would not save them. "Listen to me," she said, raising her voice above the chaos. The room slowly quieted. "Our ancestors faced this same enemy. They fought for 1,000 years. They held the line long enough to save us all. Now it is our turn." "But they had technology we cannot match," someone protested. "Ships and weapons beyond anything we can build." "They left that technology for us," nodded to who stepped forward with a data tablet. "The beacon gave us everything. Locations of hidden caches scattered across the galaxy, blueprints for ships that can match the Hollow, weapons that can hurt them, shields that can protect against their attacks." The data appeared on the screens around the room. Coordinates, schematics, instructions. Enough information to rebuild the technology of ancient humanity. "This will take years to build," an admiral said. "We do not have years." "Then we will work faster than we ever have before," replied. "Every species in the galaxy working together, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, sharing labor. It can be done. It must be done." The council debated for hours. There were arguments and objections and fears, but in the end they agreed. There was no other choice. Word went out across human space. Every factory, every shipyard, every laboratory was given new orders. The economy shifted overnight from peace to war. Millions of workers began building things they did not understand, following blueprints that came from dreams of the past. And humanity was not alone. Scientists arrived to help decode the ancient technology. Engineers brought their strength and skill to the construction efforts. Even species that had feared humans before now worked alongside them, united by the common threat. Led the engineering teams. He barely slept anymore, surviving on coffee and determination. Under his guidance, the first new ships began to take shape. They were beautiful and terrible, designed for one purpose only, to fight the darkness. Coordinated with the linguists and historians, piecing together more and more of the ancient human culture. She found records of battles, strategies that had worked against the Hollow, weaknesses that could be exploited. Every piece of information was precious. And became the voice. She traveled from world to world, speaking to crowds of humans and aliens alike. She told them the story of their ancestors. She reminded them of the sacrifice that had been made 40,000 years ago. She asked them to be worthy of that sacrifice. "We did not ask for this war," she said on the steps of the Capitol before a crowd of millions. "We did not ask to be scattered, to forget, to have to build ourselves back up from nothing. But here we are, and now we have a choice." She looked out at the sea of faces, human and dozens of others, all watching her, all waiting. "We can run, we can hide. We can pretend the darkness is not coming and hope it passes us by. Or we can do what our ancestors did. We can stand together, we can fight, we can hold the line." She raised her hand toward the sky. "Our ancestors gave their lives so that we could live. Now it is time to show them that their sacrifice was not wasted. It is time to show them what their children can do." The crowd erupted in cheers. Human voices mixed with alien cries, all raised together in defiance. Far away, at the edge of known space, the darkness continued to spread. Stars went out one by one, like candles being extinguished by an invisible hand. The Hollow were coming. But this time, someone was waiting for them. The war lasted 7 years. 7 years of fire and darkness. 7 years of battles that shook the foundations of space itself. 7 years of loss and sacrifice, and moments of impossible courage. The Hollow came in waves, each larger than the last. They poured out of the void like a black tide, consuming everything in their path. Early victories turned to desperate retreats. Worlds fell. Stations burned. The death toll climbed higher and higher until the numbers lost all meaning. But humanity did not break. The ancient weapons worked. The ships built from 40,000-year-old blueprints could match the Hollow in ways that modern technology never could. Energy beams that normal matter passed through harmlessly would tear into the darkness and scatter it. Shields that seemed made of solid light held against attacks that should have destroyed everything. Commanded the engineering corps. He had aged 10 years in 7, his hair gone gray, lines carved deep into his face. But his hands were still steady and his mind was still sharp. Under his guidance, production never stopped. Every ship lost was replaced. Every weapon destroyed was rebuilt. He worked miracles with metal and energy, keeping the fleet alive against impossible odds. Led the intelligence division. She had become the foremost expert on the Hollow, studying their patterns, predicting their movements, finding weaknesses that could be exploited. Her teams decoded ancient records that revealed strategies humanity had used in the First War. She adapted them for the new conflict, saving countless lives with knowledge pulled from the dust of, and became something she never expected to be. She was not a soldier. She had never held a weapon in anger, but she had a voice that people listened to, a presence that inspired hope when everything seemed lost. She traveled from battle to battle, standing on the bridges of warships, speaking to the troops before they charged into darkness. "Remember what we fight for," she would say. "Remember the ancestors who died so we could live. Remember the children who have never known anything but war. Remember that the darkness ends where we say it ends." The soldiers would cheer, and then they would fight. The Alliance held together better than anyone expected. Carriers flew in perfect formation with human dreadnoughts. Warriors formed the front lines, their natural ferocity channeled into something constructive for the first time in their history. Even smaller species contributed what they could, each doing their part in the great effort. Only the Dominion of remained apart. They watched from behind their borders, convinced that the war was a human trick, certain that their chosen status would protect them from the darkness. It did not. In the 4th year of the war, the Hollow broke through the Dominion's defenses in a single night. Their great fleets, which they had been so proud of, dissolved like ice in fire. Their fortress worlds went dark one by one. Their high priest, who had preached against humanity for years, died screaming as the darkness consumed his temple. The survivors came crawling to the Alliance, broken and ashamed. They expected to be turned away. They expected punishment for their arrogance. Instead, met their refugee ships personally. "There is no time for blame," she told their remaining leaders. "Your people are our people now. Join us, fight with us, help us end this." The Dominion survivors wept. They had called humanity liars and tricksters, and now humanity was offering them salvation. From that day forward, they fought harder than anyone. The final battle came in the 7th year. The combined fleet gathered at a point in space called the Threshold. It was the same place where ancient humanity had made their last stand 40,000 years before. The beacon had marked it, saved it in its memory, knowing this moment would come. 2 million ships, every species in the galaxy, the largest military force ever assembled in history. And facing them, the Hollow. They filled the sky like a living shadow, so vast that sensors could not measure their full extent. They had been feeding for years, growing stronger, growing hungrier. They knew the seal was broken. They knew nothing stood between them and the galaxy they craved. Except humanity. Stood on the bridge of the flagship, surrounded by her closest friends. Was at the engineering station, ready to work miracles if needed. Was at communications, coordinating with the thousands of ships under their command. Around them, human and alien officers worked side by side, fear and determination mixing on their faces. "All ships report ready," announced. Her voice was steady but could see her hands shaking. "The weapons are charged," added. "We have everything we need. Whatever happens next, we are as prepared as we can be." Looked out at the darkness waiting for them. It seemed infinite, unstoppable. How could anyone fight something so vast? But then she remembered the visions the beacon had shown her. She remembered her ancestors facing this same enemy, knowing they would not survive, charging forward anyway. She remembered their sacrifice. She would not let it be wasted. "Open a channel," she said, "all ships." The communication screens flickered to life, showing the faces of captains and admirals from every species. Human and countless others, all looking to her. "Our ancestors stood here 40,000 years ago," said. "They knew they were going to die. They knew there was no hope for them, but they fought anyway. They fought so that we could have this moment. They fought so that we could finish what they started." She took a deep breath. "Today we honor them. Today we show the darkness that their sacrifice was not in vain. Today we hold the line, not as humans, not as or any other species, but as guardians, all of us, together." The channel erupted in cheers. A million voices raised in defiance. All ships commanded, attack. The battle was beyond description. Ships exploded in flowers of fire. The darkness churned and twisted, trying to swallow everything. Weapons that could crack planets fired again and again, tearing holes in the endless black. Performed miracles, keeping the flagship alive through attacks that should have destroyed it a dozen times. Coordinated the fleet with a calm that amazed everyone, finding patterns in the chaos, directing forces where they were needed most. And did something she never expected. She found the beacon's final gift. Hidden in the data it had shared was one last weapon, something the ancient humans had never used, had been saving for the darkest moment. A device that could seal the void forever, closing the door between dimensions and trapping the hollow on the other side. But activating it required something no machine could provide. It required a human touch. Flew a small ship into the heart of the darkness, carrying the device with her. Her friends screamed at her to come back. The fleet tried to protect her, but she knew what had to be done. She was the one the beacon had chosen. She was the one who had woken it up. This was why. At the center of the hollow, surrounded by absolute darkness, activated the device. Light exploded outward, not harsh or blinding but warm. The same light that had filled the chamber when she first touched the beacon. It spread and spread, pushing the darkness back, sealing the cracks in reality, closing the door that should never have been opened. The hollow screamed, a sound that was not a sound, felt in the bones and the soul. They fought against the seal, tried to break free. But it was too late. The light consumed them, the door closed, the void went silent. And floated in empty space, the device dark in her hands, somehow still alive. The flagship found her an hour later, drifting among the wreckage of the greatest battle in history. She was barely conscious, her ship damaged beyond repair, her body pushed to its limits. But she was smiling. Because the beacon, which had gone dark when she left on her mission, had one final message waiting for her when she returned. She saw it in her mind, glowing soft blue against the inside of her eyelids. Well done, children. You have become what we hoped you would be. Gwardins. Welcome home. Let the tears fall. 40,000 years of exile, 40,000 years of forgetting, 40,000 years of climbing back to the stars. And finally, humanity had remembered who they were. The war was over, the darkness was gone, the galaxy was safe. And in the light of countless stars, the children of the Guardians began to build again. Not just ships and weapons this time, but something better, a new civilization, a new future, a promise that this time they would not forget. They would never forget again.